Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for a special edition of Legally Speaking about the FirstEnergy bribery scandal. I'm Stephanie Haney, and today I am here with former U.S. Attorney David DeVillers. Mr. DeVillers, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. DeVillers is the former U.S. Attorney who charged former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder and former Ohio Republican Party Chair Matt Borges, among three others, with federal racketeering. This was in the case tied to receiving more than $61 million in bribery money from FirstEnergy. Now, Mr. DeVillers, you famously said that this was likely the largest bribery and money laundering scheme ever in the state of Ohio. Householder's attorneys called his sentence unjust and too harsh when he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for his crimes. How do you feel about the 20-year prison sentence that Householder received?
Well, it's the maximum sentence, statutory sentence. So racketeering only goes 0 to 20, but his guideline sentences are even above that. So if he was charged with multiple offenses or offenses that had a cap higher than 20, he would be looking at, quite frankly, a life sentence. And that is based on the amount of money. That is based on the fact that this is the largest bribery / money laundering scheme in Ohio history. When you're talking about just the $60+ million, what he got, but you could also argue that the $1 billion is also part of the relevant conduct. In this case, the judge, the guidelines were calculated on the $62 million.
Okay. Now, today we just received the information that Matt Borges, in this case, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. What do you think about him getting that lesser sentence than Householder?
So, as you can tell from the indictment, there's three parts of the scheme. And really, Mr. Borges was only involved in the third part, and that was to kill the ballot initiative to overturn the House bill. So in a lot of ways, he kind of came in at the tail end. So I think that's what Judge Black looked at. I know that's what the AUSAs looked at too when they made their recommendation. And he's not a public official. That's another thing that goes in the guideline calculation. So he's a private citizen.
We know that both Householder and Borges plan to appeal this case and will ask for a new trial. Is there anything that you've seen at the trial level that you think they might be able to succeed in that appeal, in getting that new trial for either Householder or Borges?
I really don't. I really don't. I mean, I wasn't there for any of the trial for obvious reasons, but I also, paid a lot of attention to it. And I talked to a lot of people that were there involved in it or just watching it. And I just don't see anything in particular.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see what kind of arguments they make in that appeal, for sure. Of course, their attorneys doing their due diligence, making this appeal, asking for that. And we know that 5 people were charged in this scheme. We've got 2 convictions now, Householder and Borges, 2 guilty pleas, one from Householder's longtime campaign and political strategist, Jeffrey Longstreth, another from lobbyist Juan Cespedes, and then 1 death by suicide, and that was lobbyist Neil Clark. Is there anything that you can tell us about Neil Clark's involvement in this scheme?
Well, yeah, he was involved from the beginning all the way through. The indictment alleges basically from the very beginning of the scheme he was involved in it, and the indictment pretty much lays that out.
Had this proceeded to trial for Neil Clark, of course, those charges were dropped against him after his life had ended. Would you have foreseen him being in more of a Householder situation with a 20-year sentence, a Borges situation with a 5-year sentence, or something different?
I would guess somewhere in between those two, because again, he is not a public official too, and he wasn't really the head of the enterprise, although he was deeply involved. So I would imagine he would get something less than Mr. Householder and something more than Mr. Borges.
Okay. Now, others were implicated as well in FirstEnergy's admission, like former chair of the Ohio Public Utilities Commission, Sam Randazzo. Do you think that we're going to see charges coming forward against Randazzo?
Yeah, I'll let Ken Parker answer that question, but I think he's made it clear, as I have when I was U.S. Attorney, that the investigation is ongoing, and the AUSAs and FBI in this case are involved in it. They're going to follow it to wherever it leads. And Ken Parker has made it clear that the investigation is ongoing.
Okay. I think that I know the answer to this question based on what you've just said, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Randazzo was appointed by Governor Mike DeWine. That was over the objections of others. So aside from Randazzo, do you see any other potential charges coming, possibly against our governor, possibly against other people?
I'll just repeat what I said, that I'm confident that Ken Parker and the AUSAs and the FBI will follow this wherever it leads, and where it leads to, we'll know probably here sometime this year.
Okay. Now, as we take a look at the ramifications from this House Bill 6 scandal, we are still dealing with them in a very real way. So I want to ask you now quickly about the campaigns that householders supported to get people into office to support House Bill 6, because we know that there are people in office right now that got some of this money to fund their campaigns that were able to successfully be elected. So are there criminal implications there?
I don't believe so. And I think one of the things that we found in the investigation, and we talk a little bit about, is some of those people didn't even know they were being supported. This all came from a dark money generation now. And I know that at least some of these, both Democrats and Republicans, saw billboards supporting or attacking them, and they didn't know where it came from. They were surprised. So I'm sure some did know, but some didn't. And there's nothing necessarily, unless they were part of the scheme, unless it was something effective, we will help you get elected by assisting financially with commercials and advertising if you promise to vote for House Bill 6. Then that's a crime. But that, short of that, I don't see any federal or state criminal prosecutions.
Okay. I've got one more question for you. Of course, question I always ask whenever I'm having a conversation with anyone. Is there anything else that you would like to say as the investigator in this case, the person who brought forward the charges, about how all of this has played out so far and maybe what we'll see in the future?
Well, I won't predict what we'll see in the future, but I will just congratulate the AUSAs, Emily Gladfelter, Matt Singer, and Ms. Painter for everything they've done, and the FBI that's worked this case. I don't think anyone can really imagine how hard they've worked throughout the past year and a half with their other very significant cases as well. So I think the one thing people they think that these AUSAs just have this case and that's all they're concentrating on. They have a lot of other stuff. And in fact, Emily's is the chief down in Cincinnati. So congratulations to them. I'm very proud. I'm sure Ken Parker is as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time today, Mr. DeVillers. We appreciate you. This has been a special edition of Legally Speaking here. I'm Stephanie Haney.